volleyball dive is an open, discrete, and gross motor skill. According to Gentile's Taxonomy of Skill Classification, a beach volleyball dive is number 16. This means that it is moving and variable whilst also being both body transport and object manipulation. It is important to get into the right position so that you make contact with the ball directly on your forearms. This requires the athlete to react quickly to the ball approaching them. Squat down so that you are able to use the power in your legs to propel yourself forward onto the sand. Take a small step forward with the foot closest to the ball and use the other foot to propel yourself forward. Ensure that you extend both arms and place your hands together. The aim is to get low underneath the ball. Aim to hit the ball on your forearms and not your hands. This allows you to have more control of the ball. Swing your arms upwards to hit the ball as high as possible. This will allow you to get the ball to your teammates and not to your opponent. As can be seen, we conducted 30 trials with our learner. On the left is the qualitative results, and on the right is the quantitative results. The qualitative results were based off whether the volleyball dive was performed with the correct technique containing all of the skill components. The quantitative results were recorded based on whether the learner was able to hit the ball at least net height on their side of the court. This looks very confusing, so let's break it down. Here you can see the first 5 and last 5 trials. As can be seen, there were plenty of mistakes in the first 5 trials, whereas the last 5 trials were perfect. Both retention and transfer tests were used for learning the skill. Transfer of learning was used during this skill as the learner already knew how to perform a normal dig. The movement pattern learnt was transferred in the early stages of learning the beach volleyball dive. This was found to have a positive effect in helping to learn the new skill. The retention test was also used, which allowed the learner to take scheduled breaks during the learning process to help with the retainment of the skill, allowing for the skill to be remembered over a period of time. It was found that both tests were useful for the learner. The transfer tests were found to be more useful with the early phases of the learning skill, while the retention tests were suited better for long-term learning. As part of the cognitive stage of learning, the learner will be expected to perform many errors and use multiple attempts to learn the degrees of freedom. During the initial attempts, the learner is predicted to be better at the key elements of the dive that are the same or very similar to a normal dig. The beach volleyball dive will be learnt quickly, making the cognitive stage of learning shorter. The most time will be spent during the associative stage giving feedback, trying to refine the skill. At this stage, post-feedback will be used to develop strategies to decrease errors. Plenty of practice and correct feedback is predicted to reduce errors and increase consistency of success. Once the movement has been refined, the learner will move on to the autonomous stage, where feedback will be continued. However, the number of errors will continue to decrease, and the skill can be performed with proficiency and little physical and mental effort. To keep progressing the skill into the autonomous stage, practice in different environments will be implemented. If the learner doesn't progress as predicted, practice will regress to the previous level, and feedback and teaching methods will be reassessed. The long-term goal is for the learner to be able to perform the skill in the game autonomously. The short-term goal is for the learner to be able to perform the task whenever asked by a coach or an expert. The skill was initially shown as an entire skill so that the learner could get an idea of what it needed to look like. It was then broken down into steps for better understanding and learning of the skill. These are the 3 steps which were shown to the learner to copy. Discovery learning was used by the learner, allowing him to attempt to solve a movement problem by getting him to explore a variety of possible solutions. Trial and error was used many times by the learner. This was done through his own feeling of movements, incorporating the use of intrinsic feedback. Guided discovery feedback was then used for cueing during observational learning from the expert. This was through the use of extrinsic feedback from the expert. Verbal cues were used as well as being able to watch his performance back on the video, where the expert could talk him through his movements and he could see where he needed to correct himself. The learner needed to complete a successful beach volleyball dive with the ball reaching the height of the net on their side of the court. The measurable goal was split into qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative was based off all of the key components of the drill. Quantitative was where the ball needed to reach the height of the net on the same side of the court as the learner. The attainable goal for the learner was to progress from a normal dig to a dive. The attainable goal for the learner was to be able to master the skill during the 4-week program, so that it could be performed at any time. The time frame for the learner was the 4-week program. First of all, the novice needs to master the movement pattern. The teacher firstly showed the learner the skill so the learner could then replicate. This requires the learner increasing the degrees of freedom so that the movement is coordinated. The learner then needs to have the movement pattern in their memory so they are able to practice the movement once they have been taught. Sensory feedback is an important part of learning to ensure the movement is learnt correctly. Feedback was given by the expert to the learner in order to help them learn the movement correctly. If the learner feels comfortable about themselves performing the task, they are more likely to succeed earlier. The expert observed the movement pattern and how the key aspects of the skill were performed. During the cognitive stage, the expert gave verbal cues alongside the video replay of the performance to provide audio and visual feedback. Feedback was provided after a series of attempts to decrease dependency and increase active problem solving. Once the learner reached the associative stage of learning, the cue points were not provided alongside the video because the learner had already had a clear understanding of the key aspects of the skill. In the very early stages of learning the skill, part practice was used to break down the skill, allowing the learner to become aware of the steps involved for the movement of the skill. Once the learner was able to perform the steps properly, then whole practice was used. Whole practice, in the long run, allows for a smoother transition into a game setting. As the learner already has the knowledge and ability to perform a dig, the program has been written to improve his performance and ability learning to do a beach volleyball dive. The scheduling of practice has been comprised of 3 30-minute sessions a week, which include 2 skill-based training sessions and 1 strength-based training session. This is known as distributed practice and is considered to be the most effective for fostering retention in participants who are new to a skill when compared to the alternate of massed practice. Possible lack of motivation has been targeted in this program through a variety of drills used. Every week is different, using new progressive drills as well as relying on some of the well-practiced drills. During each session, the dive was broken down into parts before getting some time at the end to practice the skill as a whole. This method has been chosen as it provided the learner with a complete understanding of the skill and would allow for higher order development in the future.